Hi, Anthony and Bob Barker here, and today we're going to be making some flag boxes. Now this was a spur of the moment build. My dad was over and he mentioned that he wanted a way to display the service flags for my grandfather and his brother, who are both war veterans. This one right here happens to be my grandfather's brother's flag. So we just came up with a quick idea and this is what we did. So let's get into the build.
All right, so to be honest, this wasn't necessarily a planned build. I did intend to make these, but this first one, my dad happened to be over and I had the wood in there, so I said, hey, let's just make the flag boxes that we had been talking about for a little bit of time. So there was no forethought or anything that went into this. I just kind of winged it. I did improve some of the mistakes for the second one, and I'll be showing both of these builds. So for this one, like I just cut the wood down to size and I put a 45-degree cut on each of these to join them together, and then I brought them over to the table saw to get them to the thickness that I was looking for. Then once I got those to the proper size, the next thing is to put a groove in there that I'm going to be doing for the plexiglass front. And so I just measured the height that I wanted on the table saw, and then I ran those boards all the way through, and that gives a nice groove through there, so the plexiglass will sit in it really nicely. Unfortunately, I wasn't doing a miter on the bottom, and then I realized, oh, I cut all the way through, so I'm going to have to patch that up with a little bit of wood filler later, but no big deal. So now here I just have these culls that I made for my other projects, and I just going to use these to put this 45-degree miter together. So I just clamp one of those culls to each piece of the wood and then clamp it together, and that holds up nicely. So while that's drying up, I just cut off the plexiglass just using my track saw guide there, and it comes out nice and straight, and that's going to fit it really well. And so for here, I'm just test fitting it just to make sure everything is going to fit the way I expect it to, and yay, it does. So next part is gluing the bottom piece on. And so I've just basically reversed the culls on this one, and I only need one cull per side since the bottom part is flat, so that's going to hold it right where I need it. And for this part, I did put the plexiglass in place while I'm gluing this up. That way I don't have to worry about trying to get that in there right later. So the next part is I want to put just a little recessed piece of plywood in the back just to close it up. So I'm using my router to put a groove there on the back side of it. And the only problem with that is it doesn't quite get into the corners all the way, so I'm going to have to do a little chisel work once that's done, but no big deal. For the top part, I'm just going to be doing a straight square corner. So I just chiseled that out, and then that'll fit nice and squarely with the wood that I'll be using. But for the other two corners, just by the way this design went, it wasn't good to go all the way straight in, so I'm just going to basically just be straightening off that edge and not having it come to a peak. And then the next part was to get it sanded down, and I realized, you know, I probably should have did this before I put the plexiglass on there, but hey, I didn't, so just a little bit more cleanup for me later. So I just kind of sanded off all the edges and rounded off the little corners there, so it'll look nicer once it's all said and done. And now we're cutting out the back piece, and for this one I'm just using a thin piece of plywood that I had left over. And to account for those edges that we chiseled in, I'm just kind of cutting off the little side pieces there and trimming it down so it fits nice and snug here with my crosscut sled. And that's really all there is to it. Next part was to do some finish, and I didn't have the finish I wanted available, and I was too lazy to wait or to go to the store to get some more, so I just used the same finish that I used for my charcuterie boards and just put it all over on all the different edges, and with those walnut boards, it comes out looking really nice. Although I probably should have did this sooner, because doing it now just created a little extra work because it was a bit of a hassle to get all of the extra spillover off of the plexiglass. And the reason why I did this design is just because it's simple and easy, and we're just going to be setting it up on a mantle, and it just looks clean. There's a lot of variations you can do for what you're looking for. And so for here, you can see this fits really nice and snug, so I didn't even really need a backer piece. Honestly, I'd like to put like a little piece of hardware there so it could move in and out easily, but like I said, it was a spur of a moment thing. I didn't have anything available, so this just worked out well. So for the second one, I decided I wanted to miter all the edges. So for that, I'm making a jig. So most people I see have a jig that slides across your fence right there, but because of this structure that I have behind it that holds my push stick, I can't do that. So I'm just improvising a little bit, and I'm going to be making this jig just so it slides in front of the fence. So the first part is using my table saw sled to get these pieces here to a perfect 90 degrees. And of course I know it is because the way I set up this. If you're interested in this particular build, I'll put up a link to in the top corner for you. So basically I just cut these into squares, and I'm just going to cut them diagonal just to have some triangles, and that's going to be the back part of my jig that kind of holds it in a perfect 90 degree angle. So now I'm just cutting off the piece that I'm going to be using, and just a quick little mock-up here, and that's what we're going for. So now I'm just doing this nice, quick and easy. So I'm just going to be drilling and countersinking some screws straight into these triangle supports. And then once those are in, then I can just put it up to the front piece, and of course just clamp it together. Makes it a little bit easier to do it, and of course checking the square just to make sure it was perfect, and it was. So just a lot more screws, and this thing will be ready to go. And I did put one more of those supports in the middle just to, you know, keep it nice and sturdy. And the whole point of this is you can attach a piece of wood here, and then you put a little bit of an angle on your blade, and that's going to get you much more of a sharper cut than you would be able to do by having your boards still be horizontal. So here I'm just using the angle finder to get the angle that I'm looking for. And then now I can run it through there, and that's going to get me the degree of angles that I need to do miters on all three edges. So for the top one, they're going to be 45 degree angles, and then for the bottom ones, it's going to be 22.5 degrees. And I did get a little over anxious on the first run. I did 45 degrees on multiple spots, so I had to come back and shave it down to 25 degrees. It's a good thing I did it that way instead of the other ways, otherwise I would have had to cut this thing short. And for the bottom piece, I'm only doing one of them at first just because I wanted to measure it out as I'm mocking it up to make sure I had the right length. And then just like before, I'm just running a groove here for the plexiglass and all the pieces. And on this one, I can run it straight through because of the miter pieces. It won't be going to the edge. And then I'm also just using this sacrificial fence here just to cut the groove in for the back piece. And same thing with this. I don't have to do any chisel work or anything doing it this way because the edges will close it in really nice, and I won't even have to do the extra cutting on the back piece as well. And here I'm just checking just to make sure it has the right depth and width that I was looking for. So this time I'm going to go ahead and do my sanding before I put everything together. And I'm actually going to be doing a little bit of the finish on the inner parts of it as well, just to kind of make it nicer for me when I put it in. It doesn't get all over the plexiglass and create a cleanup issue for me. And then when I did this too, I was trying to be careful not to get the finish on the edges where I'm going to be gluing it up. And I did go back and sand it down one more time once I was gluing it up just to make sure I had good adhesion. And for the glue up, I'm using the same coals as I used before, and that's just a wedge cut with 45 degree angles and super glued onto another piece of board. And then you basically just clamp it onto your piece on the edges, and that's going to help put pressure on it while that glue is drying up. Could just glue these those pieces to the boards themselves to act as coals. Then you just have to kind of sand down the piece afterwards, but it's a little extra work, and this works just fine. So with that done and that part glued up, then just doing the same thing as before, getting my measurements down for the plexiglass and cutting that down to size. And the wife just happened to walk by, so she decided she'll hold that for me so it doesn't flop to the ground. And then I'm going to be putting that in place and gluing the bottom piece on as well. And for that one, I'm just using the same process as before. I just flip around those culls, and then I use the clamps to put it on together. But I did find with the miter on the bottom, it kind of wanted to slip and widen out the board. So to help counterbalance that, I kind of move things around a little bit. And then I put this longer clamp across just to put pressure so it doesn't move it out and try to widen it out. And that worked out just fine. So now after everything is together, I just do one more round of sanding just to kind of get all of that nice and round, get the sharp edges off. Then we can just cut off the back piece just like before. And this one, we don't have to cut off those little extra pieces because it's just a straight triangle that's going to be going in. And then test fit that, and it goes really nice. And so now we're pretty much in the home stretch here. Just put some finish on there, and then we can start putting the flag in. And what I did with the plexiglass on these ones, I only peeled back the plastic from the very edges, and I used painter's tape just to kind of cover it up. So that kept it nice and protected while I'm like working with this, and it made it so much easier. Once I was done, I could just peel off that tape there, and then the glass looks nice and just less cleanup, less work for me in the end. So now we're just go ahead and put the flag in, and then we can flip it around, take off the covering on the front, and then we put in the back piece, and then that will be it. And of course, I still hadn't got any hardware to keep that in, but it's snug enough where it's not moving anywhere. And here is the final piece, and I think they both came out well, but this one was a little easier to make just because I actually took the time to plan it out.
And that's the build. These are actually a pretty simple project, and it's a good way to just kind of dress them up to be able to display these type of things. And of course, you can do that for anything else you want to make a shadow box for. So this one, like I said, was my grandfather's brother's flag. My father currently has my grandfather's, and he'll be taking this one shortly. But I just wanted to keep it so we can kind of show how we made it. And I also I want to mention that I had a slight delay in making the sofa for my patio furniture set, but that one will be coming out next. I just needed a little extra room in my workshop, so we'll keep an eye out for that coming soon. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next one.